I will never forget the moment I found out my husband was cheating on me. In fact, the memory will never leave me. Every feeling is as fresh and raw as the day it happened. It started after I found a text message on his phone from a woman I'll call Margaret. Margaret and I spent most Saturdays together with our boys at junior rugby league. Our kids had grown up together and gone to the same school. We'd worked side by side at the tuck shop and spent hours in the car, traveling to sports carnivals on weekends. Our friendship was solid and long-lasting. Even when our boys finished school, we'd get coffee and catch up at yoga every Thursday. So naturally, I was curious when I saw her name flash up on my husband's phone as it lay on the kitchen island. He'd gone to the loo, it went off, I checked it. Why wouldn't I? We'd been married for 25 years. I thought we were happy. He walked out of the bathroom, his shirt half tucked into his undone pants. He looked at his mobile in my hand and raised an eyebrow. Slowly, he strutted over to me. "What have you got there?" I exploded. "Are you having an affair?" The trembling in my voice was out of control. He half laughed. "Tell me, are you having an affair?" "I thought you knew," was all he could muster. My husband, the father of my 2 sons, the man I had started growing old with, had been having an affair with one of my best friends, and I was the last person to know. My life fell into tatters around me. "For how long?" I asked. The man I had started growing old with had been having an affair with one of my best friends, and I was the last person to know. The details were messy. Things that nobody should ever know came up. The reasons were both disgusting and troubling. My question opened a waterfall of emotions he had never thought to discuss with me. For the most part, I've blocked them out of my memory because just thinking about them, let alone writing them, still to this day makes me want to vomit into the nearest pot plant. But this is what I learned in those brief, shocking moments. For 20 of our 25 years together, husband dearest had seen a few different women. Some, like Margaret, were my friends. I knew most of the others. I'd chat with them in the street or had business dealings with them. One friend, who says she never acted on the invitation, was propositioned by him. I spoke to her every day and she never mentioned it. The details were tawdry. Liaisons would take place at the local AFL ground, in the back of his car and in our house, while I slept mere meters away. And I had no idea. 226. I had heard rumors, but always dismissed them. My girlfriends had also heard rumors, but they hadn't thought to tell me, or wanted to tell me. 7 years later, I still can't think about it straight. Margaret denied every detail of it. Even when I wrote an email to her husband informing him of her adventures, she still denied it. She's still happily married. She still says nothing happened. But that text and my husband's stark admission that he'd done it for the sex but should be forgiven because, after all, he always came home to the family, prove she's lying. Disgusting woman. But over the years I have let that go. What still haunts me is the fact that no one had the heart or the guts to tell me. So much for the sisterhood. I was left feeling like a fool who couldn't trust anyone. The people who were supposed to have my back the most, apart from, my spouse, just didn't. I was left feeling like a fool who couldn't trust anyone. When people found out I finally knew what they had for so long, some tried to call me. Some even visited me in the motel I moved into. When I asked them why they had chosen not to tell me, their answers were much the same. "We didn't want you to get hurt. We didn't know for sure." Sometimes I pressed them for more. If they had been in my shoes, wouldn't they have wanted to know? Didn't they know me well enough to know I'd want to know? Surely someone thought they should at least bring up their suspicions with me. All of the answers meshed into one. "Oh, but, it wasn't our business." Let me tell you this. If you love your friend, if you want to protect your friend, it is your bloody business, no matter what. That's the one lesson I have learnt from this horrible situation. If I ever find out that one of my friends is being cheated on, and I could prevent her from feeling humiliated, I would tell her. I would tell her everything I knew. I wouldn't wish my situation on my worst enemy, not even on Margaret. Have you ever had to tell a friend their partner was unfaithful? The next story you will hear will be about how infidelity can be a difficult task in a marriage. This story details the heartbreaking experience of one married housewife when her husband had an affair with her best friend, an honest and insightful reflection on the understanding that it takes two to make a marriage work. With all the problems I had in my marriage, I do understand that it takes two. I really liked my life, a married stay-at-home mom with 3 great kids. But I had stopped acting as a wife to my husband, Tim. I loved staying at home and enjoyed downtime. Tim was social and wanted to go out every weekend and wanted someone who liked the same things. He became restless with the current life we shared. but how our marriage unraveled and the events that occurred were nothing short of disrespectful and all shit. It was a cold winter weekend. I just wanted to stay home, watch a movie, and fall asleep on the couch. Tim was ready to hit the town with our friends. Our conversation shifted to arguing, escalating to yelling with Tim going out alone. Whew! Well, it was nice and quiet, and yes, I watched a movie, ate ice cream, and contently fell asleep on the couch. The next morning, I woke up to Tim crying in our family room. Tim could cry huge crocodile tears at the drop of a hat, so I wasn't surprised. I came to find out Tim never came home that night, but that wasn't unusual. He said he had something to tell me and he hoped I would forgive him. Then he proceeded to tell me he had sex with my best friend. An honest and insightful reflection on the understanding that it takes two to make a marriage work. With all the problems I had in my marriage, I do understand that it takes two. I really liked my life. A married, stay-at-home mom with 3 great kids. But I had stopped acting as a wife to my husband, Tim. I loved staying at home and enjoyed downtime. Tim was social and wanted to go out every weekend and wanted someone who liked the same things. He became restless with the current life we shared. But how our marriage unraveled and the events that occurred were nothing short of disrespectful and all shit. It was a cold winter weekend. I just wanted to stay home, watch a movie, and fall asleep on the couch. Tim was ready to hit the town with our friends. Our conversation shifted to arguing, escalating to yelling with Tim going out alone. Whew! Well, it was nice and quiet, and yes, I watched a movie, ate ice cream, and contently fell asleep on the couch. The next morning, I woke up to Tim crying in our family room. Tim could cry huge crocodile tears at the drop of a hat, so I wasn't surprised. I came to find out Tim never came home that night, but that wasn't unusual. He said he had something to tell me and he hoped I would forgive him. Then he proceeded to tell me he had sex with my best friend. The only reason he was telling me was our boys were sleeping over at her house and they think the boys heard. Tim wanted to tell me before I walked out the door to pick them up. Tim was ready to hit the town with our friends. Go figure. I listened and didn't say one word. Tim had many indiscretions in our marriage, and I had made rules for myself when Tim would tell me or I would find out he was running around. My golden rule was to let situations go, but if it came in my home, I would be done. I already didn't trust my husband, enjoy having sex with him, enjoy him, period. And now his infidelity around the kids was directly in my home. I didn't have to ask the big why question. My best friend was attractive, had a great job, social, and I knew they were friends and liked one another. That evening I moved to the couch. I didn't know what to think and I wasn't ready to leave or get divorced. I didn't speak to Tim or my best friend. There really wasn't anything to say. Was I mad? The sad answer is not really. The first time he cheated? Hell yes. But over the years I had emotionally removed myself from my husband. I was more worried about my life I had built around my kids. At the time, what I considered a perfect life. A couple of weeks passed when my best friend said she needed to talk to me. Our boys were friends, went to school together, and it was a little hard to ignore her at this point. She told me the same story, but thank goodness left out the sexual details. Tim had told me to see if I would flinch or just show a little emotion. The weekend she was with my husband, hers was out of town working. She proceeded to tell me she loved her husband, kids, and the life they built. They had problems in their marriage, but talked and were going to therapy to work on their marriage. She asked if I would keep this incident to myself. Why let this destroy 2 families instead of 1? The weekend she was with my husband, hers was out of town working. I told her I would keep it to myself, and if she wanted to share it with her husband, it would be her decision. She still wanted to be my friend, and I did tell her that friends don't screw other wives' husbands. Don't think after Tim told me I didn't want to scream it from my front doorstep, call the school P&C and slap her silly. But I stopped with these visions and pictured my 3 kids. Did her husband, even for a moment, catch on that something was up in the neighborhood? Oh, yes. And he called me, concerned because our spouses talked every day and felt it was only a matter of time before something would happen. He asked me if I thought they have had sex. I told him that would be a great question for his wife during a therapy session, and let me know how she answers it. He never called me back. Not yelling this crap from the rooftop or speed dialing everyone I knew was one of the best decisions I have made so far. Our kids to this day see each other in school. Our families still live in the same community. I can't even imagine what heartache I spared my children. Don't get me wrong, I am human with a ton of feelings. I wish my former best friend warts, loss of hair, teeth, and this breakdown of a family eats at her every day. In reality, when she sleeps at night next to her husband, my family is an afterthought. Guess what? My boys never heard.